From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.
At the Legislature today, the House will not consider the bill to end discrimination in housing and employment. But the House did consider the Speaker's bill to create special job creation work groups to travel to other states to seek out creative economic development solutions. And dozens of substance abuse treatment counselors were at the Capitol today, telling lawmakers compelling stories about drug addiction in West Virginia. This is the Legislature Today. Good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. The Senate Select Committee on Children in Poverty approved a bill today to require all 55 county boards of education to establish funds to better provide nutrition for students. While committee members cite childhood hunger as a major symptom of poverty, Ashton Mara reports they also feel the new program can have an impact on student achievement and the overall economy.
The West Virginia Feed to Achieve Act sets forth a plan to provide all elementary school students in the state free breakfast and lunch. It expands on the already implemented federal free and reduced lunch program to provide the meals.
The overall vision is no child will go hungry in West Virginia. This bill will address childhood poverty in the sense of the feeding, the hunger aspect of it. The way we're going to accomplish that is, number one, making it mandatory that all schools provide breakfast and lunch. Looking at the elementary schools to even put in universal breakfast and lunch, which means all children would be able to eat free.
The bill requires the State Department of Education and each of the individual county boards to create a nonprofit fund to collect public and private grants, donations, and endowments to provide free breakfast and lunch to all students by the start of the school year in 2015.
Every penny that goes into this foundation from the private sector, be it individuals, businesses, corporations, goes toward food, buying food for the child.
Unger says there is no funding for administrative costs. Those will come from volunteers and through programs already in place. But committee presentations over the past few weeks have shown this isn't as simple as feeding hungry kids. Multiple speakers have come before the committee to explain that if a child is hungry, they aren't learning. State Superintendent of Schools Dr. James Ferris says this bill is necessary to couple with the governor's education bill in order to see the improvements in student achievement.
Last July, I was a reluctant participant in what we know as the community eligibility option. And that's when you take certain schools and give them universal free food. And we did it mostly in our elementary schools. We have increased our breakfast participation by 6% in Randolph County and our lunch participation by 8%. A lot of this had to do with the fact that the stigma of who got free and reduced lunch was completely gone.
Richard Goff, Executive Director of the Office of Child Nutrition for the department, outlined the alternative breakfast programs already being implemented in some counties that are helping students eat. Programs like grab-and-go meals or serving breakfast after first period. He mimicked Ferris's sentiments.
Almost 60% of our total student population are needy, meaning they qualify for free or reduced price meals. Many of these students start the school day with a multitude of problems facing them and disadvantages toward learning. And most of the 60% come to school hungry. At a minimum, we need to feed the kids when they hit the school door.
But it's the funding model that has garnered support from educators, lawmakers, and members of the private sector alike. The bill brings together government with local businesses to fund the program. And as the committee heard, it's that bond that they hope will not only fix the symptom of hunger, but the economic gap behind it. Department of Health and Human Resources Secretary Rocco Fuccello was the first to support the partnership in front of the committee.
We know that the state alone can't do things. Government alone can't do it. And I really appreciate the model of this legislation of a public-private partnership. It's not just a moral imperative, which it is, it's an economic imperative to find creative ways to work with our communities, to work with our individuals and government together to ensure that our children do have a bright future.
He was followed by State Board of Education President Wade Linger, Reconnecting McDowell Project Manager Bob Brown, and Goff, who called it a model other states could someday follow.
It's the first time in my knowing that we've had the ability to partner the private sector with government and help subsidize these meal programs that are already in place. West Virginia is taking a huge step forward. I don't think this could feasibly, if it proves to pan out like we're anticipating, be a model for other states where we partner with the private sector.
Ultimately, Unger says there's no reason why schools with federal, state, and private assistance shouldn't be able to implement new or existing programs to help curb hunger.
We have the federal dollars to do it. We're going to leverage the private sector dollars to augment that. And so there's really no excuse why the breakfast and lunch and other like backpack programs and other feeding programs we can't offer the children. There's no excuse that I can hear of, or no one's ever given me an excuse of why we can't make sure every child is fed in West Virginia.
The bill had its first reading on the floor during today's afternoon session. Unger expects it to be put to a vote by Friday. For the Legislature Today, I'm Ashton Mara in the Senate.
Senate President Jeff Kessler supports equality in employment and housing. On this program, Kessler said, quote, "I truly think it sends a terrible signal out to the rest of the nation when we're trying to draw and attract people to our state and keep them here to work here, live here, and be productive citizens here, that we set up barriers and say you can't work here or live here because of your sexual orientation, because you're elderly, or because you're disabled." The Senate may support non-discrimination, but the House will not take up the equality measure this year. Dave Mistich has that story and other House news today.
The last bill to go to vote was House Bill 3013. Introduced by House Speaker Rick Thompson, that bill would create work groups for members of the legislature to travel around the country and study job creation, while members of the House GOP have called for more legislation that would increase employment around the state. The bill was met with many criticisms. Those criticisms came from many House Republicans, including Delegate Paul Espinosa of Jefferson County.
I'm perplexed not because I don't believe it's important to engage our business community to see how we can assist them in their job creation efforts, but because it seems that the legislation suggests that it's a bit of a mystery how we can enhance West Virginia's business climate and attract quality businesses and jobs to our state.
Delegate Kelly Sabonia of Cabell County argued that the bill was too open-ended in that it doesn't specify how many delegates might be sent out of state to research job creation. She said the legislative work group could inevitably become too costly.
The economic studies have been presented. Governors in the past have done economic studies. They've done tax studies. And I think that we have the answers. We just need to implement them. There's legislation that our caucus has introduced year after year after year that would make us a better job climate. And for that reason, to protect the taxpayer money and use the interim process when we're here in Charleston 3 days a month, we could do those studies during that time when we're paid already. I would urge rejection of this legislation.
Majority Leader Brent Boggs stood in support of the bill.
I think it would send a terrible message if we would refuse to do what's right by going out, asking the questions, coming back, putting our heads together in a bipartisan way, and looking for solutions that really truly benefit the citizens of the state. This is again, it's not an end-all, it's not going to fix everything, but it is a wonderful first step.
Criticism continued from Delegate Michael Folk of Berkeley County and other members of the House GOP, although Delegate Patrick Lane of Kanawha County and House Minority Leader Tim Armstead stood in support of the bill. After a debate that eclipsed the half-hour mark, House Bill 3013 passed 92-5. Many delegates then took to the floor for speeches about a wide range of bills that must be out of committee and reported to the floor by Sunday. Delegate Stephen Skinner of Jefferson County gave an impassioned floor speech about House Bill 2856. That bill seeks to end discrimination based upon sexual orientation for housing and in the workplace.
Today I asked House Small Business Committee Chairman Doug Scaff to not run House Bill 2856 on today's agenda. That is the Employment and Housing Non-Discrimination Act, otherwise known as ENDA. I believe that if run today, the bill would have been amended and watered down to such an extent that the bill would not have offered protections for the over 57,000 lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender West Virginians. I believe that the wisest course of action today is to delay the battle in the House for another day.
Skinner went on to thank the organizers and volunteers of Fairness West Virginia for their efforts in bringing attention to the bill to try to get it passed. He also mentioned the oral arguments before the U.S. Supreme Court on gay marriage cases. Skinner finished his speech with a call for those who are afraid to support his bill to explain themselves to others.
Unfortunately, I know that there are many people in this chamber who support the bill, but they will not vote for it. I want to say to those folks who are co-sponsors and those who have not hesitated to say that they support the bill, thank you for being leaders. To those of you who support the vote but feel you cannot vote for it, it is not my job to soothe your conscience. I will not give up on you, but I want you to explain to your children, your grandchildren, your brothers, sisters, and friends why you will not do so.
Delegate Barbara Fleischauer championed Skinner's bill as well. She also said that West Virginia owes its existence to fighting against discrimination.
I am so glad to welcome the first openly gay member of our legislature. That is really a landmark. The citizens of Jefferson County should be so proud. But I just can't believe that we aren't holding out the welcome mat for people in the workplace and who just want to get a job and who just want to have housing. It's astonishing to me that after 150 years, we're not there yet.
For the Legislature Today, I'm Dave Mistich in the House of Delegates.
It was Substance Abuse Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery Day at the Capitol today. Suzanne Higgins reports more than 100 mental health professionals from throughout the state spent the day meeting with their legislators, offering their perspective on addiction.
These counselors can attest drug and alcohol abuse in West Virginia is epidemic. They see the suffering that goes along with it every day. Today they were at the Capitol to raise awareness and remind lawmakers that people who suffer from addictions have a disease.
This is not about people who are weak-willed. This is not about moral fiber. This is about a brain disease that takes over and just change how people adapt and work and function in the world. These are not about good people, bad people trying to get good. This is about sick people trying to get well.
Tammy Lewis of the Certification Board for Addiction and Prevention Professionals says members of her organization are encouraging more funding for addiction education, prevention, and recovery programs, which are often cost prohibitive.
We're leading the pack as far as the country in far as prescription drug abuse, alcoholism, and the need to have more people, a treatment available for the people here in the state. We do know that we have those high numbers, which is kind of sad for our state. And it's difficult to get treatment because of insurance, lack of funding, lack of people having money to get services that they need. And so that's what we hope to have, to open doors for people to get the services that they need so we can decrease the number of people who are suffering from this disease.
Addiction counselors are also advocating for certification and licensure. Currently, West Virginia does not license addiction counselors, and certification exists, but it's voluntary. Proponents say the stakes are too high.
When someone finally goes to treatment, if they get treatment from the wrong person, or if they get treatment from somebody who doesn't have a complete grasp of all the intricacies and all the different components that go into, how the disease came about, what sustains it, and all the components of treatment, the fear is that person is going to get turned off from treatment, leave treatment prematurely, and decide, oh, that didn't work, and give up. And continue to relapse. It's a chronic relapsing disease that is deadly.
The West Virginia Association of Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Counselors is working with other organizations on submitting to the state Part 1 of an application for licensing and certification. Mullins of the West Virginia AADC says if it passes a review process, the legislation would be drafted and presented in next year's legislative session. Senate President Jeff Kessler, Senator Evan Jenkins, and Delegate Dawn Perdue have expressed support. For the Legislature Today, I'm Suzanne Higgins at the Capitol.
In a moment, a special report on higher education. First, here's a look at what's coming up in the Senate tomorrow. Among the bills up for passage in the Senate tomorrow, Senate Bill 431, to hold liable any participating public employer owing delinquent retirement contributions to the Public Employees Retirement Board, and Senate Bill 491, relating to contracts and certain fees charged by rental vehicle companies. Among the bills on second reading in the Senate tomorrow, Senate Bill 52 to continue the Rural Health Initiative, Senate Bill 394 to provide a $7,500 scholarship to dependent children of state troopers who die in the line of duty. Senate Bill 428 allows public health agencies to charge patients or their medical insurance providers for the reasonable costs for testing. It also clarifies the procedures for testing persons accused of a sexual offense for HIV or STDs. And Senate Bill 463 to increase the amount of special license fees paid by pipeline companies to the Public Service Commission. And the bill increases the total amount to be collected from $315,000 to $400,000 per year. The legislature is expected to move in the direction of tying funding for colleges to graduation rates. Some colleges have already taken steps to improve their retention and graduation rates. Cecilia Mason looks at what's being done at Shepherd University.
For a number of years now, colleges across West Virginia have focused more attention on keeping students in school. Most colleges, including Shepherd University, have retention specialists and programs designed to help students overcome problems and find success. Shepherd University President Suzanne Shipley says the school has taken several steps beyond that to help students succeed, beginning with recruitment.
Over the past 5 to 7 years, we've put a real emphasis on attracting the sort of student who wants to stay at Shepherd and giving them the sort of experience that will keep them here. But the other piece was that we were finding it took students longer and longer to graduate. So we took a hard look at our curriculum and decided that to trim some hours from graduation would allow students to graduate in 4 years instead of 5 or 6.
2 years ago, Shepherd was the first college in West Virginia to revise its curriculum, so the number of credit hours needed for a bachelor's degree went from 128 to 120. A year later, Shepherd reported 62 seniors took advantage of the reduced credit hour degree and saved an average of $4,300 each on tuition and fees. Shepherd also offers what Shipley calls stretch courses, classes students can take over 2 semesters instead of 1 to make them more likely to succeed and complete a degree. In 2004, Shepherd created an enrollment management office that focuses on helping students succeed. Vice President for Enrollment Management, Kim Scranage, says each semester her department asks professors to participate in a survey for the Mention It for Retention program.
And this goes out to the faculty within the first few weeks of any term that begins, and we ask, how are the students doing? Do you see any academic issues? Do you see any issues we need to know about? And if they do, they refer that student to the student success team, and then we reach out to that student and say, hey, what's going on? Here's the resources. We direct them to the resources so we can assist them early on in addressing those issues and being successful through that term and then on to graduation.
Scranage says any number of issues could derail a student's ability to get a diploma. The staff encourages students to attend classes and make sure they know where the classes are. The department also works with students who have problems at home, like the loss of a family member or a job.
We find that they do respond because they are having an issue and they really do need someone to talk to. And I think that's one of the great things that we've done here in Shepherd, and we started that in 2008.
Shepherd has about 4,000 students, and before the current student retention program began, about a third of them left each year. Shipley says the program seems to be working.
We have already seen higher retention numbers. We're not quite up to the national average of a 74% retention rate. We're more in the 70% retention rate average for students, but that's better than losing 33% of your students every year, so it's up some, and our graduation rates are very healthy.
Better retention rates ultimately mean better graduation rates. Shipley welcomes changes in state funding that place an emphasis on graduation. She says currently the state has what she calls an historic funding model that is not based on enrollment numbers.
And so as you grow with a funding model like that, your state support shrinks. So what the state is trying to do is shape the type of graduates the state needs by rewarding public institutions for providing those graduates. So they're looking for graduates in STEM fields. They're looking for graduates with low socioeconomic levels, which are often the most difficult students to move toward success. They're looking for adult learners. So they're going to reward the state institutions for providing the state employment base with the type of workers and the type of training needed, and I think that's a perfectly fair thing to do.
Because West Virginia doesn't have enough high school graduates to meet the goal of attracting more students into its colleges, there's an emphasis on convincing adults to get degrees. Shipley served on a task force put together by the Higher Education Policy Commission that revamped the Regents Bachelor of Arts, or RBA degree, which is geared toward adult students.
And it was mainly focused on how adults like high convenience, shorter time to degree, and the ability to study in chunks that are maybe an 8-week chunk instead of the normal 15-week semester, with a lot of online capability.
The state paid professors to put more classes online in a condensed version so adults can earn a degree called RBA Today. Shepherd is also trying to make getting a degree more convenient for adults by opening a satellite campus in Martinsburg. But achieving higher graduation rates will do more than help colleges and universities get additional money from the state when an outcome-based funding formula is introduced. Both Shipley and Scranage say having an educated workforce is important for West Virginia's economy.
We have one of the lowest college degree per capita percentages of any place in the United States, and the more educated your workforce is, the less waste you'll have in the workplace and the more creativity at work and the better businesses you'll attract.
It's important because you want an educated workforce, and that also impacts the region's economic development. And we also know that most students, once they graduate, stay within the region.
The outcome-based funding formula legislation that's proposed would designate 2014 as a pilot year so the Higher Education Policy Commission can gather data. The formula would be phased in beginning in 2015 with a goal of attaching 25% of each college's state money to graduation rates by 2019. Separate funding models would be set up for the 2- and 4-year schools. For the Legislature Today, I'm Cecilia Mason in Shepherdstown.
And here's a look at what's coming up in the House tomorrow. Among the bills up for passage in the House tomorrow, House Bill 2108, making failure to wear safety belts a primary offense. House Bill 3158 to require the Legislative Oversight Commission on Education Accountability to examine and report annually on the results of efforts to address 6 areas related to the education efficiency audit and general progress on improving public education. House Bill 2563, to reduce the daily administrative time required of school counselors and increasing the time actually spent in counseling at-risk students and other pupils. And House Bill 2778 to define alternative nicotine products and electronic cigarettes, prohibit the sale of these products to those under 18 years of age, add alternative nicotine products to the list of products for which unannounced inspections may be conducted to ensure compliance with sales restrictions, and restrict the sale of these products in vending machines. This has been the Legislature Today. We're sorry that Reverend Matthew Watts was unable to join us for our broadcast tonight. We hope that he can join us in a later broadcast. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.